Hey there, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the show Flintlock Friday, a show dedicated to you, the viewer, to help you identify these historic rifles and muskets of the Flintlock era, as well as provide you a concise yet informative overview of the rich history that is contained within these firearms. I'm your host, Reviewer 311, and let's get started. And where better to start than the iconic French Infantry Musket. This one is a model of 1766. These are the muskets that would have been carried by Alexander Hamilton's men when they stormed Redoubt Number 10. This is an amazing piece of American history. But let's go over the specifications and dimensions of this musket. So it's going to be a lot of wood and iron, and we're going to do this lock, stock, and barrel. The lock plate right here is flat. You can see Charleville is put onto the lock plate right there with the arsenal markings of a D with a star above that. The stock is made of French walnut, which is different than the American black walnut that we might be used to and seeing on our historic military firearms. The French walnut is actually much lighter than the American black walnut. And then we have our barrel. Our barrel right here also has that D inspection mark with the star above it. It is held in by this screw that goes through the barrel tang, as well as the iconic barrel bands that are pretty common on French muskets of the time. These barrel bands are amazing. They're held in by spring tension. And then on our nose cap, we have a brass front sight post. The barrel is 69 caliber, and the actual length of the barrel is 44 5/8 inches long, and that is measuring from the back of the breech to the muzzle of the barrel, 44 5/8. The entire length of the firelock is 59.5 inches long, which is just a couple inches, well, more than a couple, but very close to 5 feet long of a firearm. And surprisingly, this thing only weighs 8.5 pounds, which is pretty cool because the originals are actually much lighter than the reproductions. My reproductions weigh 9.5 and 10.5 pounds respectively. So the originals are actually a very light and handy firearm. So how did the French get to the model of 1766? Well, we need to look back at the model of 1763, and they found that this new model that came in 1763 at the end of the 7 Years' War was too heavy. So they lightened the stock and the barrel, and they came out with the model of 1766. But it wasn't just that, because in 1768 they have some improvements, in 1770 they have some improvements, in 1771 they have some improvements, and those improvements you can sort of notice in the location of the spring right here on this lower barrel band, and also the location of the bayonet lug. Is it on the top or is it on the bottom? But needless to say, there's a lot of minor adjustments, and so the French actually refer to this as the system of 1766. During the 1770s, things start to happen across the seas from France in the colonies of Great Britain, and especially those 13 colonies that get a little bit rebellious, and then a war starts in 1775. And the French from the beginning are very interested in what is happening with this war. And in 1776, when the first American agents arrive, the French are more than willing to covertly supply the Americans with arms. And they do that through a shell company. And it is a great deal for the Americans. The Americans are actually going to be able to purchase these muskets that are coming out of French stores for about $5 a musket. And this would be compared to about $10 to $12 it would cost to produce those muskets locally in the States. And on top of that, the French are actually providing the Americans credit in which to purchase the muskets. So they're basically saying, hey Americans, we will give you money to buy our guns. And the reason they're able to do this is because the French are actually modernizing their military, and they are also upgrading their small arm military musket to the model of 1777 at the time. So they have a lot of these 1763s and 66s in their arsenals that are outdated to them. So why not kill two birds with one stone? They can offload a bunch of muskets they don't have to worry about maintaining anymore, and these muskets are going to go to the hands of people that are actively trying to take down their arch nemesis, Great Britain. So these muskets start to arrive in America in small numbers in 1776, but in really large numbers in 1777. And we have accounts that at least 100,000 of these guns made it to America. Not total, these are guns that are accounted to have made it all the way to the United States. So there might be tens of thousands or more that are unaccounted for or lost at sea. These muskets were very common towards the ending years of the war, especially. Not so much in the beginning or the middle, but towards the end, you would have seen these muskets filling out a lot of Continental Army units. Very common at that time of the war. And that basically covers the history of the musket. Well, like I said, it's going to be a very generalized history. And next, I want to talk about my experience, and we'll talk more specifically about this piece. So in closing on this amazing piece of history, I want to go over my musket, how I got it, and what I paid for it. So I purchased this about 10 months ago, and I got it on an online auction. This one cost me $5,500, which is not a small amount of money, but I am exceptionally happy with it. When I purchased it from the online auction, they didn't even tell me that there was a arsenal mark on this on the barrel. So I have a lock, stock, and barrel from the Charleville arsenal. I'm very happy with that. You will see these guns go from anywhere, I would say, 4,500 to, 10, 20,000. And that's going to all matter about the provenance and the special markings on it, that they can trace that to any certain unit. What you will see semi-commonly is that you will see guns that come up for auction that have U States or United States that is branded on the stock, and that is accepted to be from at least 1778 and later, and being of Continental Army origin. There's actually an order that went out by Congress to mark American arms, and George Washington had his men go in and brand his arms, and we have accounts of that. This does not have that, so it could have been just pilfered by a soldier or militiaman. Following the war, or at least at the end of the war, you would have seen U.S. or U.S. Branded on this lock plate. It's kind of accepted that this is very late war. When I say late war, I mean like 1782 or 1783. But after the war, when these guns went to the arsenals to be reworked, because remember, these are still working guns, you will see U.S. branded on the lock plate, as well as U.S. branded on the barrel. And sometimes you will see them without these sling swivels. For some reason, the American arsenals took out sling swivels, so if you see that, that's not uncommon. As well as if you find lock plates that are void of marks, it's also not uncommon. When they went to the American arsenals, they scrubbed off a lot of those markings. Overall, I am very happy with my French infantry musket. And now let's close with that naming convention, and that will be the fun fact. If you've watched my videos, I've made a couple of videos, and I've actually did a great live stream with Ethan Woods from 11 Bang Bang recently. But I've basically been on my personal crusade to stop calling these Charleville. If you call them a Charleville, that's perfectly fine. That's what I Google when I look for them. But just know, unless you can prove me wrong, I have seen no evidence that these were known contemporarily during the war as Charlevilles. The French knew them as infantry muskets, model of 1766. The Americans knew them as simply French muskets. They also knew them as the models of 1763, 66, the lights and the heavies. And actually, it's kind of, I've seen a reference to these being referred to as the model of 1768. This is a post-war. This is actually about 1810s. But I digress. The other fun fact is that these guns did actually have a huge impact on early American arms production, because these were the models of guns that served as our first inspiration to copy. And we copy them for a few reasons. One, we have a bunch of the guns around. Two, we have spare parts. Three, we have people and armorers and workmen that have worked with the guns. So Joseph Perkins, who is actually the first superintendent of Harper's Ferry, where Charleville style of guns were made, he actually spent time during the war years at the Philadelphia Supply Agency fixing these types of guns. So if you're going to produce your first locally made gun, why not use the one that had served you so well during your Revolutionary War? And that's what the Americans did. We chose this gun, and they actually called that gun the Charleville pattern, and that is where the name comes from. That is from the mid-1790s, to the best that I can see, and not before. happy to be proven wrong, and I'm looking forward to be proven wrong just because I want to know the history. But when these first come out at Springfield and Harper's Ferry, they are known as Charleville muskets. And you can see that kind of through line with the bands and the Charleville style of gun throughout the American musket production. But I will close with that. Thank you for watching the first episode of Flintlock Friday. I hope you enjoyed this content. I want to make this semi-regular and make these short, informative videos for you, the listener, to enjoy. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you have any comments, leave them down below. I'm happy to engage with anybody as long as you're just not too crazy. Just keep it to muskets, please. That's what I want to talk about. But until next time, have a great one and take care.